Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Earl Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, and David Wayne Foster. So a huge, massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Also below this video there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. With that, I'll hand over to whoever is in Discord and G+, so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Hey.
Good morning.
How are we?
I don't know. I just got up.
So your first thing in the day is stick Nathan on.
First thing of the day is to brush my teeth, make some hot tea. That was my first thing of the day. So what's new, Anthony? You got something for us today?
Good morning.
Hey, Elijah.
I don't really know. I'm wondering whether we should change one of the housekeeping questions for the foreseeable future. Instead of saying any scientific evidence for gravity, we should say any evidence at all, be it scientific or otherwise, for any downward bias. It's such an interesting topic, this, like, the perception that's claimed by Bob. It's like, he's basically arguing that if your car starts rolling down a cliff and you try and stop it by getting in front of it and you're pushing it backwards, you pushing the car backwards isn't going to stop it rolling down the cliff because the car's too heavy and you're still trying to push it. But it's still a bias. So he's trying to argue that's there all the time in the downward perception. And I thought about it and I thought, how would you be able to test it if it was? And I thought, do you know what you'd be able to do? You'd be able to get Zach's little, the magnet thing where he gets the little flecks of paint flicking between the two plates. Because they've got such a tiny amount of inertia or a tiny amount of magnitude to that little fleck of paint, you could measure the time it takes to jump each gap going both ways. And if there was a bias one way over the other, then he would be able to prove his point. But I don't know how you get an accurate timing device to be able to do it. Maybe you could measure the resistance. I'm sure it'd be able to come up with a test for it.
I think the fleck of paint jumping between two magnets is not something I observe in reality.
No, I agree. I've never seen it, but
it's nonsense.
It would help his argument if he was able to prove or if he was able to present some evidence.
Yeah, but it's like as kids we played with magnets in the dirt and the sand and bits of metal. Those little black metal flecks came to. I mean, it's like you're using something that does something when used in that environment. But if I just hold magnets up, they're not doing anything. But if I put two of them together and get little flecks of paint that might have lead in it, who knows? I mean,
it's like me painting a wall red and then claiming that the whole world has got a bit of red perspective to it because I've painted the wall red. And it's like, yeah, you've just painted the wall red, mate. It doesn't mean that there's a red perspective to everything just because you painted the wall red. But essentially, he's arguing technology.
Well, they also say that it's in everything. So that means wood, the plastic.
Yeah, stuff that's not magnetic.
It's not I mean, look, you got electrical wires covered with what? So you don't get shocked. I mean, come on.
It is silly.
It's totally silly. tea kettle, egg, balloon. How many more things do we need? They just want an ether. Why don't you just come out and say it? You want an ether, even if there isn't. We'll give it to you. Just shut your mouth.
If that's really the motivation, it's like, why doesn't he just say that? Because regardless of how you interpret it, all the ballers are doing is having a field day with sound bites as he says all this, and we're just looking at him going, "Fuck me, Bob. What are you doing?"
Well, you can't control other people and what they say, but you could have sound bites and have a good laugh.
I know, but it doesn't matter to us whether gravity does or doesn't exist. It really, really, really matters to them that it does. But I mean,
well,
I never
for
made
us.
that egg test. I never made the egg test video for anybody on our side. I didn't think anybody on our side would vehemently argue against it. And if they did, it would be like moot. It wouldn't be like charged in one, pardon the pun, one way or the other. It would be academic, and we'd be like, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, whatever. But obviously with Bob, it's like, of all the people, it's like, come on, why is it you of all people that's taking a vehement stance against this?
Well, even
Really?
we're not against gravity. Just show it. We're not against anything. Just show it. We're not against
See,
downward bias. Just show it.
Like I say, it doesn't matter for us if it exists or not, but it really, really, really matters for them. So it's like, why give them it when they haven't demonstrated it?
Well, we're not. That's the whole point. Until you demonstrate it, we're not going to give you anything. I'm not against it, but show it.
Can I? Sorry, I thought my mic was working and I came in a bit late. I just want to say something quick.
Yeah, your mic is working.
I don't think our motive should. I don't think our motive should be. I don't think our motive should be what the ballers say. Because if you're after the truth, you shouldn't care what like anybody says.
Amen to that, righteous.
Yeah, because we're after the truth. We shouldn't be concerned what people think, right?
I just said, why should we give them like such an important part of their argument? Why should we just gift it them? Because one person on our side says, yeah, there's definitely a little bias there. And it's like, can you prove it? Even if we were to give him it and say, yeah, there is a bias, because I mean, no one really disputes that static charge does cause acceleration. Balloons stick to walls. But is it having any influence on the world in which we live? Does it, certainly to quote Bob's words, is it the cause of the ordering inside the density tower? And obviously it's not. But he thinks it is. It's like, why would we gift him that? Why would we give him a pass when it's such a critically important topic for them? He can't have a pass on that.
You can have a take on that. Water is magnetic. It can be repelled.
Well,
which is
pure water is a perfect insulator, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So them talking about the moon and sun is causing tides and all this. You better look a little further.
We're back to the point of the tea kettle, the egg, and the balloon.
And fire.
I'm sure a lot of
flames go up, guys.
I said,
I have one.
I was thinking that just earlier. I was like,
Yeah. Right.
As I was lighting,
they tell me it's gravity that keeps it going up.
Yeah, that's the end of the argument. What you've just said, whoever it was speaking a second ago, right? Once you debunk this claim that we have a bias down, what about the stuff that goes up? That's the end of the claim. Beyond that, who cares?
If you flip it the other way around, and like the most dense fluid we've got is that what's it called? The chrome stuff. What's it called?
Sulfur hexafluoride.
No, the liquid metal one. They put the anvil in it. What's it called?
Mercury.
Yeah, mercury. Mercury is the most dense fluid that we've got, the most dense liquid. There's nothing more dense than that. It'll always be at the bottom of a density tower. If we lived in that and that was what we breathed, and I know it's liquid, but just imagine it for the sake of impression. Like Bob would argue that there was an upward bias. Now, at least in that case, everything would go up, right? But if there was a more dense liquid than that, and there isn't one, but if there was, that would then go down. But would Bob then still have the same perception that everything had an upward bias just because relative to all the densities that we're in, we will be at the most dense? I think he probably would. But in real terms and relative terms, there isn't one.
It's still a downward bias. It's just that most dense things push less dense things up. But it's because of that bias of more dense things going down.
It isn't.
Not because of the bias, it's because of the magnitude of the issue in question.
Righteous. So when helium is expanding in all directions, or a helium balloon is displaced, is it because you believe that the air around it's going down? Because it isn't.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Like, I was thinking about what you said last time about gas going in all directions, right? But we still do have like layers of gas in a sense.
Do we?
Right?
No, we don't. Don't
we
say
don't.
that. That's not
Total
true.
nonsense.
Only in a short term.
All right.
Here, naturally, we do not have layers of gas in homogeneous anisotropic mixture of gases. That's what we actually have. There's no layers. The mixture of gases is exactly the same at the top of Everest as it is down at the ground. It's just less of it. Why? Well, because there's less surface area to create the gas in the first instance. It's all created on the ground. They're only the tippy top of a little peak with very little vegetation. There's very little production going on. Whereas at the ground, where you've got lots and lots of water and lots of vegetation, lots and lots of other things that are the starting process for a lot of gases, there's a high concentration. It just gets less as you go up, because it's not being produced there. Likewise, the higher you go up in the sky, the further away you are from the production of them, the less there is. Doesn't mean we don't need containment in that argument. Doesn't mean there's gas going down, go boom boom. It isn't.
Right? Aren't we, wouldn't it be nice to address it as solids, gases, and liquids, the different properties? Is that what they're trying to say? There's a downward bias due to solids or certain type of liquids?
They're just asserting downward bias. That's as simple as it gets. There is an overriding downward bias. Force that's pulling things down. The globers assert gravity, and the fundies on our own side assert incoherent dielectric acceleration. In reality, we don't have a downward bias.
And then we're always talking about up and down. And there's this thing called weather, and it's made up of the air, and it, whooshes around the plane. And sometimes there are things like nutrients from dust. So they say from the Sahara Desert to travel all the way to the rainforest off of the wind. And that's 1,600 miles apart. No one talks about where's gravity there.
That's called relative density. It's lateral displacement, the thing that they say doesn't exist.
As a result
of
high pressure to low pressure.
Yeah.
I got a question. Is there scientific evidence that gases are more dense, or the atmosphere is more dense near the ground level because of it being produced at the ground level?
That's a scientific question. What's the effect you're describing?
Well, because I was thinking like the amount of like oxygen in deserts are like the same as in like forested areas, right?
Question, I don't know how much the air is concentrated around deserts. I don't know. But as Anthony points out all the time, we have a lateral displacement in terms of these things. They're being moved around. So at ground level, I would assume it was pretty much consistent. Now, the type of air that you're breathing varies massively in terms of how it presents itself. The humidity level massively changes for a start, and that manifests itself in a very different type of air that you're in. I assure you, I've experienced it, and I'm sure anybody in the States who's in a high humidity area will testify to the same thing. So yes, it massively varies where you are in terms of what's in the air, But overall, as an average, I'm pretty sure it's all pretty much consistent. But as you get up higher, you're getting away from where the gases are actually, and you can just show how gas is produced. Where's all the water for the steam, or all the water vapor? Well, it's all on the ground. So when it changes into the gas, that's where it's changing. It is just as simple as that. It's not really a phenomena. Phenomena in that instance would be the phase change, but not really the what is the pressure at a given altitude. That's just a what is question. It's not really a scientific question.
Nathan, I want to get your take on this. They claim that the Earth is a negative charge, right? So how could it be anything of electromagnetism going vertical when the North Pole, the North is positive, or whatever you want, how you put it, positive, and the South is negative? It's parallel, not vertical charge. It's parallel charge.
You're asking the wrong person.
So that'll be like a.
I don't know.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
I asked that.
Brian.
Yeah, that's where
I
it get down
looked
to
into that negative
diagnetics
charge
and
claim.
Go on, Brian.
There's if you look into the negative charge claim, where you actually end up, you'll get told it's negative, then you get told it's actually neutral, and then you'll get other ones that I eventually ended up at. It's claimed to be negative, or that's the theory, but there isn't any actual support for it.
What the only
any
support
real
I get
solid
is
support
when
for that.
the only support or proof I would get from that claim is if I put a car battery on the ground, it will drain it. It will ground it out.
But the ground is neutral though.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because a car battery has both positive and negative in it. A battery has both positive. A battery works kind of opposite from the normal power, the way power normally works. But
right.
For instance, the destruction of the claim is there's several easy ways to destroy the claim. If the ground is a positive and if the ground is a negative and the sky is a positive, then how can a storm be created in the sky? A storm is a negative. So how can a negative be created within a positive? But an easier way is if there's a negative charge in the ground constantly and a constant positive charge in the sky, then you should be able to make any magnet, any dipole magnet, you should be able to make it levitate. Just put it out from your body, leave it go, it should levitate. No matter what way it's turned, it should levitate.
Like that magnetism.
You know what I mean? It's like there's no people make claims of stuff and they just run with things. And they give other people the impression these things are true, like the globe out.
Yeah.
But then when you look into them, they're not.
Right.
So I just look. The easiest thing is look through yourself. Try and find the proof that the Earth has a negative charge. That's the easiest thing.
I appreciate that.
The only evidence for the negative charge claim is that it conducts electricity. It conducts positive energy, but it isn't attractive. Because if it was attractive, we wouldn't have the build-up of static charge in the atmosphere. So because we have the static charge build up, it means that it can't be and isn't attractive, even though it will conduct.
Who cares?
All right. Well, so
all
I mean,
this argument about what this
Go.
negative charge on the ground or a flow between the two, incoherent or otherwise, does it prove that there's a downward bias? No. So you can argue about this all day long. It's a complete red herring. The assertion in the first place is trying to be made demonstrably evident by this claim with the incoherent dielectric accelerative claims that they're making. Well, the claim in the first instance isn't real. We don't experience that. We don't experience a downward bias. So who cares?
Right. I don't experience a downward bias. I see a parallel bias, not a vertical, parallel.
Yeah, just ask him to show you the phenomenon.
You basic.
Go on. Rams.
So I think he's just sort of trying to get it that there's an up and a down. and that orientation, I guess, is what they're trying to justify.
That orientation is only relative to you, the observer, in your medium, how you perceive it.
Yeah, but I think that's the main tenet that Bob disagrees with. He thinks that left and right, forward and backwards, yes, they're relative, but he thinks that there is an absolute up and an absolute down that's independent of the human. And I'm like, oh, Bob.
Because he's a moron.
No need, no need,
Yeah.
no need.
Yeah, no need.
Can I
Like,
say
he's
something
disillusioned.
on the whole magnetic thing, Nathan?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. We have a magnetic field in the north, right? We know that compasses point to the north. A magnetic field creates an electric charge. That electric charge is moved throughout the whole world via the oceans, because the electric charge goes through all the oceans because of the salt in the oceans. So what happens then is a moving electric charge will create another magnetic field. So what we have going on is a huge amount of electricity being created by the only magnetic field that we can actually prove, and that's the one to the north. We can prove there is a magnetic field there because the compasses point to that direction. That's the only one we can prove.
Right.
I don't even know whether what that's claimed to be, whether positive or negative. You know, I have my own speculation that the opposite dipole of that is in the sky, or the second one is in the sky. But I don't even know the workings of the one in the north, so I can't state that there's even a second one. You know what I mean? Because I didn't build this place, but I know that magnetic field creates an electric charge, and that electric charge is moved throughout the whole world via the oceans due to the salt in the oceans. And that moving electric charge creates another magnetic field. So the second magnetic field might be the one that's created by the oceans. So that's all we can prove. That's all we know for definite, that there is definitely a magnetic field in the north.
Right. So when I heard Bob claim incoherent dielectric acceleration, he's talking about vertical, up and down. I seen that and I was like thinking, wait a minute, this and that, this and it. I'm thinking more of a parallel, like what you were just explaining. So I went in a different direction that he's going.
Yeah, well, the problem with Bob is he doesn't know what direction he's going in, and neither do the rest of the people are making this claim. As I said, they're even like the description of a hydrogen atom, right, is one proton, which is positive, and one electron, which is negative. But that's a description. But they are talking about this description as if it's really real. Like, that's a pre-assumption. That's a description. You can't prove that. You can't see that. You can't prove that it has one positive, one negative charge. That's the claim. Maybe it does. Maybe there is information out there I'm not aware of. But they're literally taking things like that and starting to say this is this thing and that is that thing. It's just like they're descriptive. Descriptive. You know what I mean? That's what they are. They're descriptive. You know, like the atomic model. It's descriptive. But they're taking these things and running with them as if it's like 100% proven. Like, I mean, we don't. How would you prove that? You know, so they're running with ideas without ever actually researching them. Like the gravimeter is one of the best ones. He runs with the gravimeter. He didn't even know. Only a few months ago, I didn't even know what it was doing. He can't trust anything.
Can we continue this?
He doesn't do his research. Sorry.
Can we continue this in the live show?
Yeah.
I think what Nathan said at the middle of this conversation, the assertion.
It's a.
Can someone hear me?
It's a discussion topic about the nature of the Earth. Why would I object?
Mic check.
Hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. I was talking, and it was like 2 or 3 people talking at the same time. So what I'm trying to say is the assertion, I mean, this is what Nathan just said a few minutes ago. The assertion is that there's a downward bias. That's the assertion. Where do we see that in nature?
I can boil a kettle and watch it go up.
Okay. So if you show it to me in the gravimeter, or you show it to me between 2 magnets that are held close and flecks of paint that might have lead in it or jumping around, Who cares? Where do I see it in nature with everything? Because this is a claim that it affects everything, even things that are not supposed to be able to have any electricity go through it, like wood.
Yeah.
We don't. I just said we don't.
Yes,
Things
Well,
conversation
well,
over. I mean, come
yeah,
on.
like
This
fire
could go
alone,
forever.
it goes up. When does fire go down? Like if you get a flame pointed down, it's gonna want to go back up.
That's right.
So there's no downward bias. So we don't really need to worry
Yeah.
about arguing about
Right.
incoherent dielectric acceleration. Claim it's used to support doesn't happen in the first instance, so who cares?
Exactly.
Globe Earth ain't got nothing. Got to argue with somebody, right?
No. Welcome to the Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Sleeping Warrior, Neil, Brian's Logic, Elijah, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all. And Arwin.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey, good morning.
What's up, guys?
Guy.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Relative, but yeah.
I like
Sky,
pickles.
from my perception, sky's up.
What?
All right, can I hijack this conversation and continue with something?
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Right, so we were discussing that in
No.
the pre-show. Can we continue that?
Push can.
Right. I was thinking, you know how you said, regardless of how you think of why there's a, more dense atmosphere at the bottom of the ground, there's still more pressure down on the ground and less pressure the higher you go. So that's still a thing, regardless of how you
That's
say
because of the magnitude of the
this
gas
is
in
hot.
question.
Hold on, let him get to the end of his question. Go ahead, Righteous.
So there's still this like vector with density.
Is there? Density? You're talking about pressure and convoluting it with density. You think there's more dense gases? We covered this in the pre-show. It's the same mixture of gases regardless. The pressure changes because there's more of it produced at ground level. But that doesn't change the density.
Right.
Pressure.
Well, if it's more pressure, isn't that more dense though? There's a
More
difference?
pressure. More of it pressing, it's hitting the walls of the container more often, because there's more of it in a smaller amount of space.
So the more you have, the more you can say it's dense, though, no?
No, the greater the
No,
pressure.
there's two ways. Sorry, there's a mix-up happening here. Temperature can create extra pressure, or a smaller container. So you can take the same amount of gas, put it in a smaller container, and there'll be more pressure. Or you can leave it in the big container and heat it up, and it'll be more pressure.
You want to qualify density in terms of the atomic weight of a gas, right? You're going to be comparing apples with oranges in terms of one gas compared to another and its density. But if you're comparing an inhomogeneous anisotropic mixture of gases and one is at a higher density than the other, that's all that's changed. The density hasn't changed, the pressure has.
All right, so then let's just stick with pressure. There's no need to go into density.
Oh, thank you.
So there's still like a pressure. I'm sorry.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, that's not 100% true.
Okay, go on,
Because
Brian.
convection,
Correct me.
convection changes. Convection is based on the changing. Well, it's temperature changing density, which causes convection.
Changing
So
the
convection
density.
is a constant change of densities.
Changing density.
Yeah, convection changes density. It's warm air is heated and it's rising as cooler air is flowing down to replace it. So it's like they replace each other constantly. That's what convection is.
That's changing the pressure.
No, it's a change in temperature, which also changes the density.
Adam, am I missing
The
something
cooler
here?
air, the
Adam,
cooler air actually
hold on.
changes the density.
Get this settled. I'm second guessing myself now. Am I missing something,
Okay.
Adam? Are you there?
Yeah. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because the word density, when we talk about gas, it's only kind of relevant if you kept the temperature the same, and keep the volume fixed and the amount fixed. Then you've got a kind of different interpretation, but you've still got the same density, but the particles are moving faster. So the particle speed, does that have an additional impact? Is it of the same magnitude of actually increasing the density? No. But will it have an effect? Yes, but probably negligible, I would suggest, in terms of aerodynamics and the likes. But still got to have an effect because you are changing part of the behaviour. But me and QE were talking about this last night. It's odd.
Yeah, but Adam,
But the density of the particles never changes, does it?
It does. It does. With temperature.
Hold on, Brian. We know your position. I disagree. Right. We're seeing what Adam's got to say on it. Go ahead, Adam.
What are we keeping fixed? We're keeping the volume fixed. Yeah. And we're just increasing the temperature. Yeah. And if that's the case, then we don't have any extra molecules. We just have the same molecules moving faster. Which, like I say, isn't equivalent to increasing the density per se. It will have an effect, but it's not an equivalent way of saying it, because you've still got, say, 6 moles of gas in the cylinder. Now you've got 6 moles of gas at 10 degrees higher, so you know.
Okay, but if you've got a cycle, yeah, and that cycle is introducing, by way of phase change, more gas into the system, is that a density increase? If so, I'm wrong and Brian's right.
If you're putting more gas into the system, then you've got a density increase. But this is in a dynamic system. More gas in one area pushes more out the other. So, but if you're talking about within a contained system, if I take a contained system and have 6 moles of gas and then add an extra 1 mole, yeah, technically it's more dense. Yeah.
So Brian's right. I was wrong.
And
you'll increase the pressure as well. Yeah, you'll increase the pressure as well, but you've actually increased the density. You could increase the pressure by raising the temperature and not adding more. That wouldn't affect the density of that sealed container.
Fine.
Yeah, temperature will also change the density. Convection works off of a change of density. I'm not making this up. This is like official. Like warm air rise. Think about a hot air balloon. Right, the air becomes less dense. and that's why like helium is less dense in a balloon, it's less dense than the air around it, so
No.
it is displaced up to it. But
You change its behavior. It's difficult to call. See, I wouldn't say less dense per se, because if you're going to discuss it, you've got to kind of put it into a container to discuss its behavior, so you can describe its behavior.
The problem we've got, Brian, right, is the same problem we're going to have when we try and qualify this in terms of what's the cause. What causes the balloon to rise up through the air when you heat up the gas that's inside it? Well, what are you doing? Well, you're creating the gas to have a more excitable circumstance. So, okay, so you could say, well, is it the pressure that's increasing? Well, no. Is it the density that's increasing that's causing it to rise up? Well, no, unless you give it some sort of causal attribution, which you do in terms of structural support. Well, how are you going to define it? You can't. The reason you can't is because this is an entropic effect. So therefore, when you start getting down to the what's causing it aspect, you're trying to figure out the cause of entropy, and you're never going to achieve it.
well, I have to say that you're missing a major point here, because convection, right, is based on, within a gas, is based on the changing of density of the gas. So the warmer gas moves more, but is also less dense. And the cooler gas moves less and is more dense. When you turn that gas into a liquid, you use water. More dense and less dense water will give it, warm water and cold water have two different densities. And the plimsoll lying on a ship is the proof of that. So gas and water are, although one is bonded and one is unbonded, they still matter. They still are affected by temperature the same.
No, not really.
No, I don't agree at all.
It's reversed, actually. So a liquid will become less viscous, won't it, the more we add heat? And the reverse, as you were saying, we add heat within a container. We make the gas. See, gas behavior is just, it's not comparable. It does different things. It's not bonded. Therefore, everything's individual. So, no, I'd say you can't directly draw that comparison. If you add heat, you get this effect and the same effect in a different phase.
Okay, then what causes the colder air to flow down the way?
Brian, you can go and look up, and no one has an answer.
Exactly.
It's called
you're asking.
entropy.
Well,
your question's about change, Brian.
It's density.
Brian,
No, they don't.
You're asking a question about change.
They go, hot air goes to cold, and then the only way they can demonstrate it and explain it is to stick some air in a balloon and then do a buoyancy calculation. What they can't do is explain it properly, just within the molecule behavior.
Right, Brian, you started off asking about something that starts with something changing. Well, what's the single word, Adam, that describes entropy?
Change.
Change. Right. So you're trying to figure out when this change occurs, how is the causal relationship established? I think this is so futile.
I don't think so at all. I think it's absolutely extremely important. And I think that you're missing a major important point. Gases still matter. It's still affected in the same way as water is affected.
No, it isn't.
Or solids are affected.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Things that, hang on. The temperature affects them all the same way. Has the same effect on all of them.
Not true. That's just simply not true.
Well, how come warm gas goes up, warm air goes up, and cool air flows down?
And warm water undergoes a phase change.
If I drop a ball bearing through some syrup, the contact time is greater than if I warm that syrup up, individually. Now, when you do it with a gas, you're not getting the two behaviors, because you've got intermolecular bonding and you've got gas behavior. The two aren't analogous. I don't see why, because you've got the effects of stuff that's got intermolecular bonds, and then you've got something that you're trying to describe in fluid dynamics, but fundamentally isn't. It's individual particles that we have to approximate to and call it fluid dynamics with air, but it's not. It's just the only way of dealing with that many individual particles.
Okay, well, what about this then? You take a balloon, right, with gas in it, and you put it into a warm, very warm environment. That gas will expand out that balloon the warmer it gets. That gas, right, what happens is the heat causes all the little particles to move further and further apart. You put that same balloon into liquid nitrogen and it will all deflate. It'll all go down, it'll all start to concentrate together. It'll still be
the reason they're able to increase their distance is that they're now going faster, therefore hitting the walls of the balloon harder, yeah, therefore stretching the balloon. Therefore, that's what gives them the greater space. If you do that in a rigid container, the space doesn't change. It's just the speed changes, so that the pressure increases. See, when the balloon expands, it negates some of the pressure increase.
This is Boyle's law.
With the egg, wasn't it?
Just hold on. This is Boyle's law. This is what's currently being discussed, just so the audience can look it up after the fact. Boyle's law.
That's what
There's not actually any more gas particles there. It's just that the gas particles that are there are behaving a lot more energetically.
Yeah, they're hitting the container more often with a greater force. So when you heat it up, it expands the container. When they're hitting it less often with less force, it decreases the size of the container. In the case of a balloon, because it's variable, because it's stretchy.
Yeah, so density is not changing at all.
Not in this
unless
scenario,
you
no.
add more gas particles.
Not unless you add more gas, no.
Okay, I don't see how what you're saying is debunking what I'm saying. It's like the more heat, the more movement, the more expansion. The less heat, the less movement,
We're not
the less
disagreeing
expansion.
with you. We're not. We're saying that's Boyle's law. But what? As soon as you start trying to say why, that's when we run into problems.
Okay,
Look,
this is something I've noticed. It's something I've noticed, right, on the panel, right? Do you think gas is magic? Gas and water are both matter. Water is affected by temperature. Heat can cause water to become less dense. Cold can cause water to become more dense. Heat can cause gas to expand, and cold can cause gas to deflate. Let's just say, for want of a better term. That's still matter. Matter is still matter. There's still certain laws that it has to abide to.
It doesn't cause it to deflate.
Well, yeah, but I looked for that was the only word I said for the want of a better term.
This is what I'm saying. It's complex. You can't use comparable terms. They're not comparable. They're two different phases. So when we try to equate the two, we run into the problems caused by the very distinctly different behaviors. One are individual molecules acting individually. The other, is a fluid where all the molecules are linked and their fluidness, has an effect. There's intermolecular bonding. So you can't draw that comparison. In terms of your language of structural support, there is structural support within the intermolecular bonding, but there is no direct structural support. There's just more collisions.
But you're missing the point. Matter is still matter. I'm not even trying to talk about structural support. I'm just talking about the base facts that matter is affected by hot and cold. Matter is still matter.
Well, we're not denying that. We're not denying that. We're just saying to try and put causation, to it is not possible in my report.
What does it matter?
It's just matter in a different phase.
Hold on. Oh, that's a good question from Neil. Hold on, Brian. That's a good question, Neil. What does it matter? Well, because it's a fundamental question about the nature of our reality. So it's a very, very important question, and that's why Brian is asking. And it's not an invalid question. If when you talk about the nature of reality, and then you talk about the second law of thermodynamics or entropy law, that's change over time. Crucial. That's what we're dealing with when we live. So why discuss it? Well, because it's fascinating. However, there's all the laws in the world that describes gas, there's loads of them. Right, and they all hold true as descriptions of what gas does. None of them are establishing cause, and I don't think we ever will. Because when you get down to the nitty gritty of where did it all begin, that's what you've got to get to when you're talking about how did change over time begin, so that you can establish the cause of it. Well, what do you get down to when you start looking at the beginning of time? Well, you start getting into the ontological primitives. That's where you end up.
I was like making a joke, like, what does it matter? Does it matter? Yeah, it matters.
No, but it's still a good question, Neil. Yeah.
Yes, Nathan.
Well, I have to disagree. I have to disagree. Gas is still affected, and density of the concentration of gas, if you want to call it expanding in one way due to more movement, and I don't know, despanding with less movement, it's still affected by hot and cold. Warm air still rises and cooler air still flows down. This is a constant.
No one's disagreeing with that.
Yeah, but you're trying to say that the density doesn't change.
I haven't
Well,
explained that
we're
either.
discussing density and pressure in those conditions.
I don't know what you're saying. I honestly don't know what you're saying, because
I'm saying it. It's hard to argue in the air because it's so dynamic. Yeah, but if we were describing systems where we keep the volume the same, the number of molecules the same, and we affect the temperature, then technically that's not a change in density. Because the number of molecules per centimeter cubed is still the same. They're just moving faster in that space.
Yeah, but if they're moving around more, are they not more expanded?
No.
Well,
they're still in a fixed. They're still moving in that same number of centimeters cubed, the same containment. So at any one snapshot in time, yeah, their density is the same, isn't it? Because the number of molecules per centimeter cubed is the same. Now, the differential is the pressure they exert. Because they're moving faster, they'll exert more pressure from the same density.
Okay, well, what about when you cool it down enough and it goes into a liquid form? I mean, it has to become get to a certain point where it phase changes to liquid.
In a liquid, then no longer is the volume of the matter dictated by the container. Suddenly, the container will be larger than the volume. Now, the volume of the liquid is dictated by the temperature and the constriction of intermolecular bonding.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is to turn the gas into a liquid, it's temperature that does it. Like, how can liquid have a change in density? And even solids have a change in density due to temperature. But gas, no, there's no change in density. I mean, gas is still matter. It's still matter. What causes warm air to go up and cooler air?
There you go again. There he goes again. Yeah, what causes it, eh?
Okay, so when you say density, how do you describe the density of a single molecule? Because that's what we're talking about. Yeah, when we're talking about liquids, we're talking about all those molecules that are joined. Yeah, same with solids. So we can express that. But when we've only got one molecule, then it's very difficult to talk about density in gases because there's slightly different concepts. If you see what I mean, because we can increase the temperature and fiddle about with the pressure, and because we're talking about individual molecule behavior here, not the behavior of a volume of liquid, which has its own innate as the whole. It acts as a whole, doesn't it? Not as individual molecules. Yeah, so that's the difference for me.
Yeah, but water. Let's say water. Let's just say liquid, right? When it becomes less dense, right? All the molecules spread out. Yeah, is that not true?
No, the intermolecular bonds become larger, don't they? But they don't spread out and don't. The second they don't have those intermolecular bonds, it becomes a gas.
Yeah, but what makes them less dense then? Because less dense is a less concentration, let's say, per square foot. Let's just say.
Yeah, because they're more flowy, aren't they? So and the gap will increase slightly. They're vibrating slightly less, so they'll less energy. So
Well,
they're not. They're not separate, are they? In a liquid.
No, but the point I'm making is I'm speaking about, we have to get into what is density then, because this is where we have to get to, because like I understand liquids and solids are bonded and gases are not, but I'm talking about density. What does more dense mean and what does less dense mean in general?
Excellent question.
Because
Excellent
that's the question.
Well, you're asking something that when you get to the gas part, you start qualifying things differently. So when you come to the solid or the liquid, you stick it on a scale and it's relatively easy to qualify it, and you can give it a mole value, right? But what Adam's saying is when you've got a square centimetre of wood and you've got a square centimetre of any liquid and you've got a square centimetre of a gas, the gas can be under all sorts of different scenarios. When you've got 1 square centimetre, you can ram more of it in there, but then you start having to qualify it in terms of its pressure, as opposed to its mole value. Well, the mole value and what the gas particle as an individual, as Adam's saying, doesn't change a whole great deal. It's only dictated by the space it's got to move around in. Well, it's just moving around, right? Well, yeah, but it hits other things more often. So, okay, but it's still just moving around. Yeah, but that has an adverse effect on the conditions that it's in and all the other gases around it are in, and the force exerted on the walls of the container. So then you start moving over to qualifying it in pressure. So in other words, you've got these two different concepts that don't interlace when you go past that phase change. So yeah, you're right. When you try and qualify things in terms of their density, it gets very convoluted when you start qualifying that for gas, because it doesn't fit into the convention anymore very well.
Okay.
What if we talk about it in terms of compressibility of a state of matter?
Well, when you're talking about a liquid and a solid, you've got different parameters to when you've got something that's got inherently just gaps around it. And if you this is Boyle's law again, when you start decreasing the size of the container, you're decreasing the size of the gaps in between, so the collisions increase. Well, that's going to have an adverse effect on the pressure. How many times those gas particles hit the walls of the container is going to be dictated by how closely rammed together they are. Obviously, if they're much, much closer together, they're much, much more likely to hit the walls of the container. Therefore, the pressure increases. But we're in a different convention now.
Well, are we? Because we have matter. Matter is still matter. It didn't turn into something else. The matter that was a liquid is now a gas.
We can't qualify it in terms of the amount of force it exerts on the walls of its container, because it's not expanding in all directions when you've got a liquid.
Yeah, okay, but gas, I mean, if you're heating gas, it will rise. When you cool gas, it will go down. So it will flow down. That's what convection is described as. So what causes the warm to rise and the cool to go down? Because
Stop. Adam, when you ask the question that Brian has just done, what causes hot to cold? What's that process called, by the way? Hot to cold?
Entropy.
I know entropy, yeah.
So you're asking what causes entropy? That's your question, Brian.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm asking why.
Yeah, you are. You don't have to like it. You're asking what causes entropy. You don't have to like it.
Okay. Warm water is less dense than cold water, right? Warm water will rise and cold water will fall. But yet gas does the same thing. But yet we don't attribute density to it. Why not?
Because in terms of mole values, you can change it, and then you've got to have parameters around it to describe it within a slightly different convention. So how much pressure you've got is based on the amount of heat, could be varied. We've already covered all of these things, Brian. But you haven't just got a set amount per square centimetre, like you would with a gas or a liquid. So suddenly you're into, well, how much have we forced into the container? What pressure's it at? What heat's it at? Things that won't vary the other two to the same degree. So you're into convention. You're just trying to describe how it happens. And you've got a reasonable convention that works reasonably well for liquid and solid. Then you move into gas and go, well, that convention doesn't work anymore. So let's use a different convention. But that means it's not universal for all. Well, isn't that what the fundies are on a globe want to seek out? Universal laws for everything? Well, unfortunately, life's not that simple. We live in a beautiful and complex world that we're struggling to even describe, let alone explain.
That's what I wanted to say. I'm all for investigation, but we're going to start trying to figure out how God did it, because God is the one that has these answers.
When we're trying to compare the two, just the only example is I can give is if we take a mole of water, its volume and consequent density is going to be defined just by the temperature. There's slight variances in that phase, but it'll be pretty steady, around about 1 centimeters cube. You know what I mean? So there's going to be very little variance, but the only thing that varying it there is the temperature. The only purpose of the container is to stop it running away. Yeah, it's not affecting its density. But if we take the difference with a gas, we have to have containment to be able to try and measure it. If we apply that temperature change, then actually a factor with regards to we're thinking of its density, or as you're saying, which it isn't because its density doesn't change, but the other factor, as well as the temperature, which plays a massive part, is the actual container. That isn't relevant to defining it for a liquid.
Okay.
Brian, do you remember your last question? I just want to say that I agree with what your question. I agree with your point. Your last question, if you can remember what you asked, ask it again.
Oh, you'll have
You
to
said-
remind me, Anthony. I'm after doing a lot of
You said-
thinking since then.
He said when we talk about like solids and liquids, we talk about density being the cause, but why is it not the same for gases? Or words to that effect?
Yes, yeah, I do. It's like it's still matter. Why do we have to describe it different for gases when gases do behave the same under? Well, they might be unbonded, but they have similar behavior when they change in temperature.
No, they don't. That's your problem. That's a fallacy.
Well,
that's the problem.
What? How is it? They don't do it?
Just because everything's matter doesn't mean they all react the same, and that's why we have different phases of matter, right?
But I'm talking about temperature. How temperature affects these things. That's what I
How
was talking about.
temperature. If you're talking about gases, then you have to take 3 factors into account every single time: pressure, temperature, volume. You always have to take those 3. Never leave one out, because as soon as you do that, you're screwed.
What's the fallacy called for a category error? What's it called?
Fallacy of division.
Fallacy of division.
I definitely agree.
Okay. Okay.
Inferring that something is true of one or more of the parts from the fact that it's true of the whole.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw a cat amongst the pigeons. Who actually measured and counted all the gas molecules?
Me.
What?
Took me a very long time.
Because that is
guys-
not just a description?
What are you
A
talking about?
calculated description for the ideal gas law.
What is the ideal gas law?
Well, PV equals nRT.
Okay. What does P mean?
Pressure.
What does V mean?
Volume of container.
What does T mean?
Temperature.
There you go. N?
Boom.
N is number of molecules.
R?
And all gas constant.
Yep.
Yeah.
So PV equals nRT, right? So what does that have to do with your counting of gas molecules?
Give props to Brian.
Because
Give props to Brian. You knew exactly what all PV equals nRT stood for on the spot.
I think all I'd say with that, Brian, is it's calculated, but it's confirmed, isn't it? So, and it's done with molar stuff, so transfer and the like. So 24, I think it's 22.4 liters, isn't it? That a mole of gas will occupy at STP. Yeah. So again, you see, you have to qualify its behavior with everything in the case. Yeah, because it's the only way to describe it. It has to have those extra parameters, whereas liquids and solids don't.
Yeah, but Adam, the PV equals nRT is describing behavior. There's nobody, like, I mean, when they say that, like, people, I've heard people say the gas moves about at 500 meters a second. Now, I've read it moves it.
That depends.
As an average, right? Just people, just let me finish what I'm saying. I've heard people say it moves at 6, and I've read it moves at 7 and 750. The point is that is a description. Nobody counted all these things. Nobody counted. Nobody can measure that. So
Yes,
it's a way of
they
describing
can.
it. Well,
Yes,
how
they
do you
can.
measure a gas molecule moving at that speed?
You can. I can't think of it right off the bat, but you can. Adam, help me.
No, oh, man, this is like 20 odd years ago, and I'm racking my brain. I suppose fundamentally, I would give you that there's convention in it, Brian. If you're asking, has somebody counted the individual molecules? No, there's a level of convention, and it's molar convention, which I think
It's molar, right?
Yeah. So
what's the actual problem?
I'd concede we've not counted them individually.
Well, this started off, John, with me talking about convection and how convection is described as air that's heated becomes less dense and rises, and cooler air then replaces it as it's flowing down. That's how convection is described. And
With gravity, by the way.
Adam and Nathan are saying that the use of the word density with gases is not adequate. But I pointed out that the exact same thing happens with heat and cold with liquids and solids. That liquids and solids are affected the same way as gases.
No, that's why you're off, because gases, liquids, and solids are all different. That's why they have different names.
Okay, well, when you heat liquid, it becomes less dense.
Very minutely. It depends on what liquid you're talking about, too.
Well, I use the plimsoll line on ships as an example area, because the plimsoll line on ships.
What does that have to do with liquids and solids?
Because the plimsoll line change as you go into warmer waters, you're going to find that the boat is going to be further down in the water line because of the density of the water. That's why he's using plimsoll lines.
Relative salinity is going to have an effect as well.
Yeah, you got a bunch of factors here you're not taking into account, dudes.
Well, what I am taking things into account. It's just the gas, warm. Well, let's say hot air rises, cooler air it doesn't fall, but it flows down. It replaces, like a replacement. The warm air replaces the cooler air. The cooler air replaces the warm air.
And does hot liquid? Brian, does hot liquid do that?
Yes.
Are you saying it expands out to fill the container? Liquid does that?
No, it replaces. Warm and cold replaces. No. When you boil water, that's what's happening. It's convection.
No, the phase change. Just the water, the liquid water, right?
Yeah,
so you can change it within it.
Replaces, yeah.
Hold on, just let me get to the end of my example. So you change it within the parameters prior to phase change. Now, don't even get into the nitty gritty. If some of it at the surface will change phase, I don't care. As a whole, the majority of the water stays within the same liquid state. Does that expand to fill a container in all directions?
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the temperature and what temperature does to it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about convection.
Yeah. I'm just saying, does it do that or not?
Water doesn't water doesn't expand out of it what you put it into.
Okay, so we can agree then that they are fundamentally different in terms of what they are and what they do. Then.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Temperature. How are they affected differently by temperature?
You're trying to look for commonalities in things that are fundamentally different. Fascinating, but not very useful.
Warm water. If you heat water underneath, the warm water will rise. As it cools, it will go back down. That's a circular type of a cycle that happens when you boil a pot of water. That's what happens. Warm air will rise. Cooler air will replace it.
Cooler air.
Yeah.
I'm not understanding the question.
The question is, what is the cause of this change over time?
What is the cause of the change over time of what?
In this case, universally applicable change, description for that change, applicable to all phases. Not achievable in my opinion, trying to ascertain the cause of entropy.
That's correct.
I'm not trying to. I'm only speaking about the effect the temperature has. That's what I'm speaking.
Temperature. When you're talking about gases, what did I say?
I know pressure, but pressure, temperature, and container,
and volume. Always.
Yeah, container, volume, and container. That's what I said. Container. That's what I meant.
Always.
I should have said volume.
So don't just use temperature. When you say temperature, that's meaningless to me when you're talking about gases for the most part.
Let's try
Yeah,
this a
I'm
different way.
speaking
Brian,
about.
let's just try this a different way. PV equals nRT. How do you apply that to solids?
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry, I was on mute. I said, I said it, but I said, no, you don't, because it's a description for gases.
So
you don't employ that to solids.
So when we're describing gases, the principles applicable are different. So you can't have something universally going to apply in terms of heat in this example to both liquid and gas because they behave so differently.
Well, they don't. Heat causes what? Heat, hot and cold, causes the same thing within water, within liquids and gases.
Yeah, but that's just one aspect. There are so many differences between gases, liquids, and solids. It's unimaginable, right? They're completely different.
Yeah, but I'm not arguing that. The point we started on was about convection. Within
convection of what?
Yeah, of a gas.
Okay.
And I argued. I'll clear up. My argument was that the warmer air is becoming less dense and the cooler air is becoming more dense, so they replace each other, as that's how it's described.
Well, for the most part, the hotter air has more kinetic energy, right? It's going to be going every which way really, really fast. But the cooler gases, they're not going to be moving as fast, right? So there's going to be more space in the hotter gas, correct?
Yeah, totally agree. And could that be described as density? Yeah, but can that not be described as density?
No, because that's not the cause of it.
Right. What is density? Even though it's internally inconsistent, what do we use the convention as? What is density?
Mole.
It's the. Sorry, Nathan.
Mole.
What?
Mole per volume. How much you've got of something in a given space.
It's just it's mass over volume. We'll say matter over volume. That'll be better.
Mass over volume. I just didn't want to use that word, but yes, I just didn't want to get hung up on that word. The amount of stuff in a given volume.
Yes.
Okay. And I gave the example earlier of when you put gas in a balloon and you heat the area it's in, the balloon will expand. But if you put that same balloon into a fridge, the balloon will shrink.
Well, yeah.
So that's the amount of matter within a volume. There's two different. If you use the balloon, there's two different sizes.
No, it's not two different volumes. No, it's not two different volumes. No, it's not. It's the same balloon.
Perfect, Brian. We've come full circle. This is where the confusion started with me. So this is the point where no, the density does not change if you're going to use that convention. The amount of stuff. Careful with my language. Doesn't change in the balloon.
Is this an elastic?
Hang on.
That's an elastic balloon.
Because if it is, keep it as a rigid container. Otherwise, you're trying to tweak too many things. Put the pressurizer container, right, then put it in a fridge. But if you've got a balloon, then the pressure will affect the volume. But if you stick with a rigid container, then
a rigid container, yeah.
But that's why I went to a balloon. Because a balloon shows us an expansion and a decrease.
A balloon demonstrates the differential. A balloon demonstrates the differential in terms of temperature difference with regards to gases and liquids. If you fill that balloon up with water, the volume is not going to be affected by the elasticity of the balloon. There's no effect that the balloon has on the volume of water.
Okay. Right. If I take 1 second then, right, this is why I use the balloon. If I take a balloon at normal room temperature with gas in it and I fill it, just a normal amount with gas in it, I then heat that balloon will expand. If I bring it back to room temperature and then cool it, it will deflate. So the gas, the same amount of gas is occupying two different spaces, two different size spaces at different temperatures. Because it's
absolutely right, Brian. You're absolutely correct. Absolutely 100% correct, Brian. The density changes because the volume changes with a balloon. You're absolutely 100% correct. And QE and Nathan are morons.
No, Get that idiot up. Second law doesn't apply to the earth. Get the hell out of here.
You're a
Brian,
moron,
decent
QE.
conversation.
Brian knows more about this than you do. You're an utter
Would
moron.
you shut that moron up?
Brian.
Yes,
No need, because I agree totally. Of course, if it's an elastic balloon, that's what I was saying. You've got to keep it the same. Otherwise,
The volume's
you're
changing.
scooping oranges and apples, aren't you?
Yep.
Well, that's why I use the balloon, because that's the visual of what.
Yeah,
the gas
because
is
you're
doing.
changing the volume too. That's the problem.
But I'm not
Well, not
changing the
just
volume. The gas is changing the
The
volume.
elastic balloon is expanding and contracting. It has elasticity to it.
Yeah, but
I don't even know what
the
the fucking
temperature
question
is
is.
changing.
Yeah, but
the
no,
temperature is changing the size of it.
as a consequence of the gas behavior, yeah, up or down, what the container changes, right? But as a consequence of the temperature change, right? Now, because that happens, that then has another knock-on effect with regards to the gas behavior. Do you understand? So you're not playing fair. Like I said, your water, it doesn't make a difference, does it? The water's volume is not going to be dictated to in any way by the balloon, but the gas's behavior will be.
Well, I don't know that.
but
I don't know. I've never done that with a balloon with water. I don't know if heating it will cause the water to expand or deflate with hot and cold. But I know that it will happen with a gas.
The role of the container will not affect the behavior of the liquid, will it?
Well, the liquid will still behave. Oh, sorry, come on.
If I put it in a balloon that's twice as big or half as small, yeah.
Go on. Well,
then the water will change based on the temperature alone. The container has no bounds to what we're describing here as density, does it? It's just going to behave based on that temperature change. But the gas is not. It's not true for the gas.
Well,
yes, it is. The gas, the temperature will affect the gas. Definitely.
If I put gas into a solid container, then and I heat it, it will increase pressure inside the container. If I bring the temperature down, it will decrease the pressure. If I put it into a balloon, the balloon will expand with heat, and the balloon will deflate with cold.
Yeah, but hold on, Brian. All you're doing is you're changing the V value as well. So you're increasing heat, but then you're also altering V. That's all they're saying. As you stretch the balloon's material, the volume is going to alter as well.
That's my point. By heating the gas, you are causing it to make the balloon expand, and by cooling it, you're causing it to deflate the balloon. That's the point.
Yeah,
you
but
won't
that's just
see that with a solid container.
Brian. That's a visual manifestation of the gas pressure changing and the increased pressure stretching more of the balloon, so you can see it visually. But the effect is still the same. They're saying if you just want to qualify what the effect is, you don't have a sliding V if you're trying to qualify it. You keep the V constant so you can see the P change.
Yeah, but is that not a bit of a cheat when you're talking about gas?
No, just keep one thing constant.
No, that's Gay-Lussac's law.
Right, yeah, but you can't. The gas has not been allowed to expand then. So it's been called pressure and density is being kept out of it. But yet the density of the gas, if it's expanding out the balloon, it means that the particles.
We're back to the density has changed.
Make the balloon 1,000,000 times bigger.
Oh God!
Well, the gas is still behaving.
Guys, hold on one second. Just don't want the audience to miss anything, and I'm going to shout out a couple of super chats just to be waiting for a while. So sorry, gonna have to hold that thought. Al Junkie, shout out to Arwin. He says Arwin is ace, and I will not stand for it if he is silenced. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Also, somebody who gave me a hippopotamus in a a treasure chest LV23. Thank you very much indeed for the $50 super chat. Really appreciate it. Sorry guys, had to do it.
Thanks. Okay, that cleared things up.
It did.
I think you want to create a cheaters with your solid containers.
You're just giving it a sliding V. You're just changing the V so it's sliding scale.
I didn't change anything. The temperature changed it. That's my point. The temperature changes.
No.
Volume changed. Keep everything at the same volume. I don't even know what your question is at this point.
Yeah, but it's about density. Like, I'm keeping the same volume of gas within the balloon, but just through the change of temperature, I'm changing the size of the balloon. So,
but you're not changing the density.
Well, if there's
Yeah, no,
more,
you're
but
not.
I'm changing I'm changing the area it's concentrated in. If you take a square inch of the center of that balloon,
No.
Can I
Well,
add
leave me
something?
leave me
There's
finish.
still the same
Right, leave me
number of
finish.
particles there. You haven't
look,
changed that.
Depending on how
Not
you
if you're
hold on,
expanding it.
Brian, you can have the same effect induced by changing any single aspect of that formula. For instance, you decrease the volume, the effect will be that you're getting more collisions with the container because there's a decreased surface area. Same if you do that in reverse, increase the surface area by increasing the container. All you're doing is changing the V, akin to increasing and decreasing the balloon size as a net result of a change in pressure. Now you can also introduce more of the gas, increase the density, and you'd have the same effect if you kept the volume the same. Yeah? So in other words, yeah, you can induce the same effect by changing one of the aspects described in that law. But it doesn't mean that when you change one of the other aspects, like the volume of the container when you stretch the balloon, that means that the density is increased. No, but just because the density, if you increased it, would have the same effect, doesn't mean that when you change the temperature to induce the effect on the volume of the balloon, that means the density is changing. It doesn't.
Okay, I'll make one last point, and I won't continue arguing after that. If you take the balloon at room temperature with gas in it, you take a square inch of the very center of that balloon. You heat that balloon and it expands. And when you cool that balloon, it deflates. Will the amount of gas particles within that square inch stay the same throughout that whole process?
On average, just within a square inch?
No, because the balloon's expanded.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So
Then you've changed the V.
You're changing the volume.
Changing the
If you
volume
take a
then.
rigid container,
The point I'm making is that square inch of gas. I know it's not. I don't know how you'd have a square inch of gas, but there's that square inch area, right? Will change in the amount of molecules that's within it.
No, it doesn't. Brian,
Container's got
let me try a different way. Brian. Brian.
I know the container, but that's
Let me try. Let me try. Hello. Let me try one more way. One more way. Try to rearrange this formula as many ways as I possibly can. Brian, please. Let's just try it a different way. Let's say you've got a magic machine that's super glued to the outside of the balloon, so that with a mechanical device you can stretch the balloon to its maximum capacity. So you're increasing the volume of the balloon, not because you're introducing more gas, but because you've stretched the balloon out to be bigger. Do you change any of the other variables? Yes, because you've increased the size. But have you introduced more gas? No. Have you made the gas a higher temperature to make it move faster? No. But it's still having less collisions with the walls of the container because you've increased the surface area, the V. But I'm doing it with a machine. You're doing it by changing a different part of the formula, which is introducing a greater temperature or introducing more gas. But you can change different aspects of it by altering different parts of the formula and getting the same end result. I.e., in Boyle's law, you change the size of the container. Yeah, you're going to increase the pressure because you've decreased the container.
Yeah, but you're making my point for me there.
When you put it in...
I'm not trying to... One second, sorry.
Just let Brian finish and then Don. Go ahead. No, after Brian, Don. Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry. Right. You have to just... Making my point... You're literally making my point for me. Because you're admitting that temperature will change. Because I can show what the balloon temperature will change the gas. Temperature will have a change on the gas.
Brian, right. You're describing an effect of the containment, right? Forget that. Just describe what the effect on the gas molecule is by the temperature increase.
Yeah, it's more movement.
Faster.
Or less movement. By the temperature increase.
Well, that's the effect. If you then allow that effect to play out with a non-rigid container, that effect will have another effect, which will have a knock-on effect, won't it? A back loop, yeah? But if you don't allow that effect by just keeping it contained properly, then you've got your effect there. The molecules will move faster. That's it.
But the molecules will move faster, but the point I'm making is they'll still expand away from each other more.
No, they're not. They're moving faster. Whether they expand away from each other depends on the type of containment, doesn't it?
Yeah, but the fact that the balloon expands and deflates with hot and cold shows that.
Brother.
That's an effect, a secondary effect of non-rigid containment, and caused by making the molecules go faster.
Well, but just because you make the molecules go faster, why is it expanding?
Because they're hitting the walls of the non-rigid container, which applies more force on it, which forces the non-rigid container out.
So you would say that
the volume.
Yeah, but that's my point.
That's not your point.
It is, because it goes back to the density. That was my point.
The only reason the density, the dodgy description of density with a gas has changed is because you've got a non-rigid container and you've allowed the effect, which is to speed up the gas molecules, to play out on that non-rigid container. And then you're inferring something from that, but you can't.
Okay, I'll finish with this one thing. I'll go back to what I said about that square inch within the center of the balloon. Within that area, that little square inch, hot and cold will change the amount of gas particles, molecules within that square inch just by a change in temperature.
Right. I agree in the balloon, but in a rigid container, at any one-time shot, whether it's 5 degrees or 10 degrees or 100 degrees, the number in that square centimeter will be the same.
Yeah, it's just the movement will be more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would like to know the temperature of this, the cold temperature.
We got there in the end, Don Gio.
Let's just celebrate agreement.
We've got agreement at the end.
I was gonna say,
we've reached consensus
chirogenics
on these well-established natural laws. Happy days. Go ahead, Don Gio.
I don't think we have. I don't think we have.
Just let one of the guests. Just got Brian. Just let Don.
Continue on, I don't want to take over the whole show. With.
You are currently.
Yeah, you got liquid oxygen that is a chiro.
Just clear the air out, Don. Then you can go. Go ahead, Don.
You got liquid oxygen that's chirogenic liquid, right? So how cold is this temperature you're talking about? The gas, like where you have the gases in, because it can be paramagnetic.
We're not talking about paramagnetism, for fuck's sake. Goodness gracious, man.
Yeah, it's definitely something to
It
tackle.
would be the high pressure that it's under, isn't it, as well, which is forcing the phase change, not necessarily just a component of the temperature. Yeah, particularly because otherwise you've got to get to what is it, minus 160 or something like that, haven't you? Now, under
and
high
what pressure?
Yeah, exactly. So, atmospheric, I think, is
okay. Yeah, you got to keep that the same, right?
Yeah.
Because
no, what happens if we do this?
All three.
What happens if we do it in a balloon?
All three kissing cousins. You just can't take one cousin, right?
And that's what I'm saying. If you then put that in a very small container, a huge amount, you induce a phase change.
Yeah,
and that's why you have liquid oxygen in there, not necessarily because you're storing it at that temperature.
Albeit with an incestuous analogy. Yes, QE's correct. These are all interconnected at different points of a triangle, if you like, and you affect one, you affect the other. But it doesn't mean to say that if you're affecting one of those corners of the triangle and inducing an effect as a result, that means that one of the other corners is the cause of it, in this case density, changing temperature. Well, it's thrown a slight spanner in the works when Brian introduces a variable volume, because then you've got to qualify that away. Hopefully we've done that already.
Yep.
Shout out to M for the super chat. Thank you very much indeed. Doesn't say anything, just gives me money. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Is that it? Brian, did you not want to start that again for the fourth time?
Please no.
If you want, I will, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere today.
This is a fascinating subject. I'm glad it's taken the entire show, because we're talking about things that, in reasonable estimations, people haven't got causal attributions established yet. Nobody's done that. So is it reasonable to discuss this? Yeah, it's fascinating. Right, we're on the tip of the spear in terms of understanding the world we live in when we discuss these subjects. You know, this is right on the cutting edge, because the truth be told, nobody knows. Nobody's got the answers. So, yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic subject to discuss. But the problems are always going to come when somebody comes along and tries to assert a causal relationship, or because there isn't an end to that particular path, they start ascribing effects that don't occur. and then ascribing causes to them. That's the problem. That's why we've started this discussion. You know, the assertion of a downward bias. That's where this all began in the pre-show. Well, the assertion of a downward bias in the first instance is not true, but trying to explain, probably in the case of gravity, reasons behind entropic effects, that futile discussion leads you to a just so story that ends up you with people antipode and forces needed to hold you to a ball. That's where this all begins. People just trying to give causal attribution to things that they haven't actually scienced. And, you know, if you haven't got an empirical explanation for something, just keep your mouth shut. Don't start making up stories, because you end up somewhere down the line with somebody humiliating you because one of your assumptions is fundamentally flawed, you know, or can be debunked in this instance with a bit of gas behaviour when you assert a downward bias. So that's why we're on this subject. That's why we're on this tip, because our own side are going down a path that we're trying to rebel against when it comes to heliocentrism. We're fighting against the just so stories that have tried to explain things that are currently unexplainable. And the net result of that is you end up on a bloody ball hanging off from people that are upside down from you. It's crazy. You know, that's where it leads. And, you know, that should be a lesson, and it hasn't been. You know, people want to get straight back on a different path, slightly different fork in the road, and it's just going to end up in humiliation. You know, if you want to establish the cause of an effect, science it. That's what it's there for. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to the pre-show. So with that, I'll say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, however, stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. A massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, there's a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Very good.
Except for those cheaters with their solid containers.
Not one add-on, right?
That's funny.
Oh,
here comes
from
the-
Rumpus.
Here comes
That
the
was the
biggest
only
moron.
ad homing in that whole show, wasn't it? When the Rumpus came in,
yeah, he
a
does-
really good heated debate. But the only time it descended into that was when the Rumpus popped in.
Yep, that's his calling card. Yeah, go somewhere else, Rumpus. That was a fun time. It was exciting until you came.
Yeah, well, Brian was right and you were wrong. It was amazing. He was teaching you about science, which I find absolutely incredible.
Shut
You
up.
don't
You
even
don't know
understand.
anything about
His point
science.
was
You wouldn't know if
amazing.
it landed on your
Robert,
face,
can I
spun
ask you-
around and whistled Dixie. Shut up.
You don't even know what air is.
QE didn't. Actually, Adam was actually correct in the things he was saying. He said Adam was the only one who seemed to understand what was going on.
Rumpus, what is air?
You didn't understand
Shut the
what
hell up.
Rumpus, what is air?
You're a moron, QE. You get everything wrong. It's
Shut
amazing.
up.
You're
you
addicted.
clown.
You're addicted to being wrong about
The
everything.
second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the Earth. That was a great one. I just
Correct.
went over that one. I'm
And you-
doing the Numpty clips. You're like a charter member on the Numpty clips, man. You said some stupid shit, man.
You think entropy and the second law of
You,
thermodynamics are the
think,
same
you don't
thing.
know
and
what I think.
You did. You've been saying that for months, and so has
Rumpus,
Nathan
what is
copying you.
air?
And
What is
only
air?
when I pressed you on it did you. You seem to have changed your language recently, where
Hey,
you use them
because
differently.
balls, dude.
So
I'll
you're
tell you what. Do you
beginning
know
to
what looming
understand
is?
they're different.
Define looming
You
and
don't know
provide an
anything about-
example for us.
Doesn't even know
What
what
is
air
looming?
is.
I was trying to the other day, but you.
What
managed to
is
keep on muting
looming?
me, so I
And
didn't.
then provide an. I want the definition of looming, and then I want you to provide an example of it.
Okay, looming is the additional raising beyond the standard refraction of objects in the distance above their geometric position.
Negative. That's not the definition. I want a
That's
citation.
exactly what looming is. And
I want a
don't even have
Rumpus
a-
is
citation. That is
quoting
not
you.
citation, please.
What geometric position? You don't even have a geometric
Go
horizon?
on the Thomas Young website, the Andrew Young website.
Citation.
Hold on, he's giving one. He said.
You guys hear that doubt in his voice?
Hold on, he said
Not at all.
he's given his citation. He said
QE
Andrew
is
Thomas,
just a moron. He doesn't know what looming is.
QE.
It's
not
the
QE, it's Rumpus.
additional refraction above
Rumpus,
standard refraction
I heard.
that
Thank
causes
you.
things
I'm
to rise
clarifying.
up.
Thank you, Rumpus. So you're saying Andrew Thomas Young. The problem with that particular citation, Rumpus, and I'm sure I've taken you through this before, you're just an idiot, is that he describes having a line of sight to a geometric horizon, something that you have specifically told us we do not have. So in order to derive
In a non-refraction case, he describes
his refraction value.
In a non-refraction case,
My
he talks
bad.
about
Are you
line of sight to the
scared of
geometric
this?
horizon.
Are you scared of me pointing out
No, you
that
won't let
Andrew
me finish.
Thomas Young
I'm
has
trying to
drawn a
respond,
line
okay.
of sight to something we cannot see? Because that's what he's got in that citation. I've read it plenty of times.
Okay, you go ahead, and then you say, give me 15 seconds to respond then, okay? Go.
I was in the middle of describing how he's got a line of sight to a geometric horizon. Now we'll draw the line of sight to the geometric horizon, he says in that citation. And you can't draw a line of sight to the geometric horizon. You haven't got one.
On then. So you're not going to let me respond?
What, while I'm in the middle of my statement? No, I'm not going to let you rumpus the shit out of me while I point out for the third time. Maybe you'll tolerate listening this time. We'll see how many times I have to repeat it with you saying, am I going to get a chance to speak while I'm in the middle of pointing out that Andrew Thomas Young has got a line of sight, meaning you can see it, to a geometric horizon that we cannot see? Oh, Rumpus has run away.
Oh, I've been unmuted, have I? Oh, jolly good. So I've deafened myself, so I've no idea what you've been saying.
Andrew Thomas Young has got a line of sight to a geometric horizon. He says, until now, we have drawn the line of sight to the geometric horizon. Line of sight means you can see it, and you can't. So his citation, describing looming, for this example, has line of sight to a geometric horizon you don't have anymore.
No, it doesn't. No,
it says, until now, we have drawn the line of sight to the geometric horizon. That's what it says.
Until now, and now he then says he's not going to, yeah.
So you can't draw a line of sight to it because your derivative refraction value has R in it. That's why he's got a line of sight to the geometric horizon. To get R to refract the horizon to a non-geometric position, it's a paradox.
Was two lines of sight. One...
No, we've only got one line of sight. Is that to the two horizons?
I can't respond, can I?
Sorry, we've got two lines of sight, have we, Clown Show?
You're frightened of what I'm going to say, aren't you?
Well, you just said it. You said we've got two lines of sight. No, Clown Show. Only one.
He considers two situations.
I've only got one line of sight, though, and it doesn't include a geometric horizon.
Situations.
Those two situations aren't inclusive of the one that's only got one horizon, and it's not geometric. He's drawing a line of sight to it to get his R value. That's the problem with your citation. Are you too scared to actually listen to it?
See, there's two situations.
He just seems to be saying there's two situations through my rebuttal that debunks Andrew Thomas Young as a citation for this, because he, until now, has drawn the line of sight to the geometric horizon. And in order to have a line of sight with it, you've got to see it. And you can't. Does he run away like a coward again? What a shock. That's what he does.
Muted him.
If he can't get away with rumpusing the rebuttal, he'll talk constantly until someone mutes him in Discord, which is presumably what's happened right now. And then he sticks his fingers in his ears. In other words, either I will rumpus this rebuttal to the point where I can justifiably say I haven't heard it, and then I'll just ignore it completely and say there's two different circumstances. There's two lines of sight.
It is two situations. He considers two situations, one with and one without refraction.
Wait, how many?
He considers two situations, one without refraction, which is where you have a geometric line of sight. And
when do we have that? When do we see this situation?
With a geometric? How do you do that?
Jesus Christ.
How do you do that? Our question is, when do you get the line of sight to the position you cannot see?
Let him answer, Rumpus.
Geometric horizon.
Yet. I've got half the mangled question. Over talking.
Let them answer.
You're asking a question, aren't they?
Let them answer. They're trying to answer you.
He's going to turn it into this, my friend. While I point again, what Andrew Thomas Young does is draw a line of sight to a geometric horizon. It's the second scenario in Rumpus's two situations. Well, that scenario requires drawing a line of sight to something you can not see. We do not see the geometric horizon, yet Andrew Thomas Young's got a line of sight to it in a particular circumstance he can't achieve. And if he can't achieve it, he's not going to be deriving an R value to move a horizon that you cannot see to a position that you can see. Because in a second scenario that we don't get, he gets the geometric horizon. Well, we don't get it in reality. So in reality, we don't have a geometric horizon. In Andrew Thomas Young's citation, he's drawing a line of sight to it.
That's because it's a
So in the
theoretical
non-refraction
construct
case, he
and a
draws a
thought
straight line.
experiment. That
And in the refraction case,
Well, in the non-refraction case, he draws a straight line. When does he do that?
In the non-refraction case,
When does he do
draws
that?
a straight line. It's
When does he do that in reality?
in the
When does he do that in reality?
draws a curve.
When does he do that in
Let's try it
reality?
again.
When does he do that in reality?
Refraction case,
When does he do
in
that
the
in reality?
non-refraction case,
He's going to rumpus this because he knows that if I ask him when he does it, he doesn't
not being allowed to.
do it in reality.
Rumpus, we've heard you.
Yeah, he's going to say it 16 times, though, because I'm asking when he does this in reality. When does Andrew Thomas Young draw a line of sight to the geometric horizon in this scenario you're describing? When does he do that in reality? Answer, he doesn't, because we haven't got a geometric horizon. That's the end of Earth curve. That's the end of the heliocentric model. It's dead. Because you need a geometric horizon, and Andrew Thomas Young draws a line of sight to it.
In the non-refraction case, he draws a straight.
When do we see that in reality? Answer, never going to come. Because we don't see it in reality. I ask, when do we see the geometric horizon? We don't see the geometric horizon. So in this scenario, it's only being done in maths, not in reality.
Curved line. In the
To
non-refraction
what?
case.
Okay, rumpus.
No, I'm getting allowed to finish my goddamn sentence.
Nah, I'll just point out that we haven't got a geometric horizon. We do not see the geometric horizon, says AB Science. The geometric horizon only exists in the maths, says the rumpus. We wouldn't expect to see geometry, says Planner Walk. It's pretty damn clear that we haven't got a geometric horizon, but for Rumpus's citation, Andrew Thomas Young makes it explicitly clear. He draws a line of sight to the geometric horizon. So when I ask when does he do this, we get a lot of disturbance and a lot of coward fear and a lot of projection and a lot of rumpusing. Because they don't draw a line of sight to a geometric horizon, they haven't got one.
Exactly.
You have a rebuttal now, Rumpus.
No, he stuck his fingers in his ears the moment you muted him and stopped him from censoring me pointing out that he can't do it.
It's so annoying when he does
So
that.
he'll
He's
just claim he hasn't
over
heard
the
it.
same
He'll
word
come back in and
over-
say the same thing, that he's got two scenarios, ignoring
So
my
when he
rebuttal
comes
that
up
one of
with
them doesn't exist in reality.
So when he comes off deafen, you mute his dumb ass again. Because we don't want to hear it.
Yeah, he's got nothing to offer.
You can try and cause
Well,
disturbance.
according to, I just want to let you know, there's been an update. According to Professor Bell, Bell End, every horizon we see is geometric.
That's funny. That's funny.
Was that Phil on?
And as soon as you ask
Brandon's last night.
As soon as you ask him on that,
Yeah.
he wants to go back. He wants to go back to the example of non-refraction, which would imply a non-medium, which never occurs.
No.
And he's
they
saying
don't
that
even
Andrew
understand
Thomas Young
refraction.
draws a straight line and a curved line. To what? To what?
It only exists in theory, okay, because it's a thought experiment, because they need it to be at 1.22 miles at a 1 foot observer height, and it's not.
Yep.
Exactly. Black Swan is the reason we're having this argument with Rumpus having to disclaim, by way of rumpusing, that he hasn't got an answer when I ask where does Andrew Thomas Young draw a line of sight to something we cannot see. That's Earth curve, by the way. The geometric horizon we're talking about is Earth curve. It's the line of sight to something you cannot see. It used to block boats and buildings with its physicality. Now we're being told that we can't see it. But we've definitely got to draw a line of sight to it to get an R value. And you can't. End of globe model.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
right,
Rumpus said the
Nathan.
other
And
day
unicorns
that
exist in
it's
my
not
garage.
a visual horizon, but it is visible.
Yeah, unicorns exist in my garage. I can just give you the math for that. Prove it in math.
I can't see him saying that.
Well,
There's two scenarios. One scenario with unicorns and one scenario that's reality. I draw the maths for the unicorns in scenario one that's not reality, and then infer that in reality what I see in the horizon is actually a unicorn, because I maths the unicorn in scenario one that isn't reality, and then infer that it's an antecedent, my unicorn, for the horizon, because I've mathsed it in scenario one that doesn't exist in reality. That's what they've done.
Well, it's not a real measurement. It's only numerical to match their globe R.
And the new one is there is a geometric horizon you don't see, but it projects from itself the apparent horizon that we see.
Oh yeah, I heard that one. Yeah, that's a new one right there.
Well,
the
it's
recent
not a
one
new
is
one. All of it is the same, and they're basically saying when I look out into the distance, I'm looking at holograms.
yeah. Here's a new one. They say for us to get to the physical horizon, we have to remove the atmosphere first.
Well, is a projected image not a hologram? Is that not how it's defined?
So, in other words, for any of their mathematics that asserts Earth curve obstruction, they're not valid because there's atmosphere in the way. Bill Bell, on screen is a picture of a horizon. Is it geometric?
Listen to that real closely. Do you hear that and you see that? That is the death throes that they're still in of the heliocentric ball tard spinning space monkey religion. You feel it? I feel it.
I feel it.
And I got a wry smile.
Me too.
Thanks.
Yeah. For all those who said the black swan's just a drop in the ocean and not very important, dead already. Is that why we're being told we don't see Earth curve? Because that's what the geometric horizon is. Is that why we're having people having to fundy mute me asking when we see Earth curve, the line of sight to the tangent point physical Earth curve edge? Well, that's the assertion in their geometry of Earth curve. And I ask Rumpus, when do we see this in reality? And because of the framework of the question and where it's being set here, he's got to Rumpus the answer. You'd think he'd just say we see Earth curve all the time. Just for people's information, on screen now, Donkey Dick Geometry from Andrew Thomas Young. And the line between point 0, O, and point G is the dotted line tangent point horizon, formerly known as Earth curve. It's the line of sight to that which we cannot see. And in his description, he makes it explicitly clear. Up until now, we've drawn a line of sight to the geometric horizon. Well, they must, because they're doing geometry, to get their bent line that isn't geometric. It's not going to give you an R value. It's an assertion that's been utilising a point you can't see anymore, thanks to this bad boy, the Black Swan. Alive and kicking and killing the globe.
It's a wrap.
They were also claiming last night on Brandon's that if you're shooting at something you see, that you're not shooting at that thing.
Yeah,
that's what I said. That's what I said.
Just let me get something in. What you're describing now in this particular, twice someone's mentioned it, right? Which is to say that the horizon is projected into a different non-physical location. Sorry. And when you're shooting at something, it isn't really there. This is absolutely accurate for the heliocentric model. I learnt this 3 years ago from Chris. Nothing in their model is where it's supposed to be. When I said the slightly looming non-standard refracted hyena holographic projection of a clock from behind the reified, now debunked sphere edge horizon to give you a mirage of a clock. Everything, without exception, everything that you see, if you believe you're on a sphere, isn't where it's supposed to be. Everything is refracted, nothing's where it's supposed to be in a globe world. That's how nuts it is. Everything's a hologram.
And what you see
it would
here
render
is a mirage.
all the world's militaries, as soon as they invoke refraction, which they don't have a clue of what it is, as soon as they do that, It would render all the world's militaries impotent and useless. You clowns. You're done.
Hey,
Death
shout
throws,
out,
baby.
Shout
It's
out
the
to
death
math.
throws.
Shout out to math is fun. Curved line, a line that is not straight. But in geometry, a line is always straight, not curved.
Yeah, if you're a glober, you've got to say straight lines are bent. And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Also, link below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!